Good morning everyone. Well, it's a beautiful morning, it really is. A stunning morning. I know you can't see that way, but I don't know whether you remember when I used to walk these fields back in November, and there was just this pathetic little runs of grass that looked so insignificant. Well, they don't look insignificant anymore. They look absolutely beautiful. I bumped into the farmer yesterday for the first time, and I asked him, what are these fields going to be? What's the crop? And he just looks out across these fields and he says, wheat. I said, when is it going to be harvested? He said, end of summer, start of September. I'm so looking forward to seeing that. I don't know whether you've ever walked through fields of wheat when the sun is setting. Anyway, if you've never done that and you want to do that, come up. God willing, we'll still be here. And you'll see what it looks like when the sun sets on fields of ripe wheat. It's just one of those things you've got to do in life. Anyway, we have finished now the 3 missionary journeys, and I believe that the church of Ephesus is, for many reasons, probably the most important study of all, because it's where Paul was at for the longest amount of time. He put the most doctrine and teaching into. There was an intimacy there that I don't think was there with the Corinthians. They wept on his neck, they kissed his neck. There was such a love, an amazing sense of love. Now, Acts chapter 20 is known for the fact that Paul speaks his last words both to a church and also to the leaders. And let's just have a little read of this together in Acts chapter 20. So it says in Acts 20, now on the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Paul, ready to depart the next day, spoke to them and continued his message until midnight. And there were many lamps in the upper room where they were gathered. We know what happens. He continues to midnight. Poor Eutychus falls out of the window from the 3rd floor to his death. Paul goes down, does what Elisha and Elijah do, and the man is raised up again, and then Paul just gets straight back to it. No messing about there. Straight back to it until daybreak, talking, ministering, talking about the kingdom of God. Now, we're not privy to what he says there, but we are to when he meets the elders at Miletus. So it says, verse 17, from Miletus he sent to Ephesus, and he called for the elders of the church. And when they had come to him, he said to them, you know from the first day that I came to Asia in what manner I always lived among you. And on he goes. This is a very special chapter. And I'd like to ask you, now this is a discussion point not now about how you would speak to a non-Christian and an unsaved person. No. If you knew that you were never going to see your Christian friends again, people that you've come to know and love and respect, particularly the younger ones, don't forget all of these were younger, they were young Christians, all of them were. But anybody, let's say you just knew for whatever reason, you would never see their face again, what would you say to them? What would you pour of your own experience and the Word of God in you? What would you say to them? And what would you say to them concerning the future? Remember what Paul said here. Because what would you say to them concerning the future? That's the first discussion point. Now the second discussion point, and there's only two because this one is, it's the hardest thing in the entire Bible. And if we don't do it, we failed as Christians. So let me just explain this once again for the younger Christians that maybe didn't get this. Paul writes a letter to the church of Ephesus. And you can look at the letter, it's a beautiful letter. He talks about how they have been blessed with every spiritual blessing. They're seated with Christ in heavenly places. It's a beautiful letter. It shows them their standing in the Lord. Paul commends them for their love, etc. He keeps talking about love. And he goes on and talks about spiritual warfare, etc. Now, bearing in mind what Paul warned these elders of in Acts chapter 20, he warned them that wolves were coming, and he warned them to continually watch. That's what it means. Continually watch out. Now, clearly they did, because when we get to Revelation chapter 2, we read about this church, but 40 years on from that point. 40 years on. He says to this same church, I know your works, your labour, your patience, that you cannot bear those who are evil. You can't bear them. You can't bear injustice. And you have tested those who say they are apostles and are not. You found them to be liars. And you have persevered and have patience. You've laboured for my name's sake and have not become weary. But nevertheless I have this against you, that you have departed from your first love. Okay. I believe this is the most crucial teaching in the entire Bible for Bible-believing Christians that are committed to upholding the Word. To churchgoers that don't really care about the Word, this is neither one thing nor the other. Doesn't mean a thing to them, because they don't understand what it is to uphold the Word and to take a stand. But for those that know how to take a stand on the Word and to uphold the Word, they understand that this is the most difficult thing in the world to do. And that is to uphold the truth of the Word, to stand for the truth of the Word, to stand for righteousness and justice and holiness, to stand for these things, and yet simultaneously be people that are absolutely embedded and marinated in the love that we see displayed at the cross. This is the most difficult thing for any Christian, to both uphold the truth of the Word, but to actually display the same measure of grace that we see displayed to us through the cross. It is the most difficult thing to do. And I mentioned, and I know it's funny, I mentioned, on this last weekend, we've had this field practically to ourselves for almost 6 months. Apart from Mikey and Natasha, a lovely couple. All of a sudden we get invaded. And that's what it felt like. We get invaded at the weekend. A guy comes next to us that was just a vile person. There's no other way of putting it. He sees that he needs electricity, he pulls us out, he knows full well that that electricity is plugged into us, doesn't care, pulls us out, plugs himself in. My first reaction is to go round there to absolutely lambaste him, to pull out the thing and plug ours in and simply mete out whatever consequences there is. That's what I wanted to do, because it's an injustice. It might sound like nothing, but I do believe that the Lord was trying to show me something. It's an injustice. Well, I went round there, tried to be calm. I think I was kind of 70% calm. I said to him, we've been plugged into that plug for 5 months. It's never been unplugged before. This is the first time it's ever happened. The The language that man used was vile. He basically told me he was going to kick my face in, and I can feel everything in me building up. Building up the anger inside of me. And I just said to him, listen, leave it. Don't worry about it. You stay plugged in. And I came in, and we basically went to church. What I didn't realise is that everybody on that site, this site here, it was packed, heard that conversation. And it so happened that one of the guys that runs this place was told by the other people how vile that man had been and how we had not retaliated. When we got back from church, there was an adapter on that plug. We were plugged back in, and the guy that runs the whole place had been to him and said, nobody acts like that on this campsite. I think he actually said, the only person that's allowed to be a bleep, bleep, bleep is me. And they came and they said, how are you? Is everything all right? And so on. Now I know I could have been better. I know I could have been more gracious, friends. And it was gnawing at me that I could have really used that opportunity. But at least it was a witness to the other people that they know we're Christians. They know what we stand for. And here's the thing. This is the hardest thing in the world to do. To uphold truth when you know you're in the right, when you know you're being wronged, when you know something very unjust has happened to you. Now that's a pathetic example, but the reason why I'm talking about this is that this is going to happen more and more, church. We are going to see more and more unjust and unfair things happen to Christians. That is an absolute certainty. And unless we begin to not just talk about carrying the cross, but experience on a daily basis, live it out, carrying the cross, displaying grace in situations where the last thing you want to do is display grace. After the meeting, a couple of people came to me on Sunday morning. One person explained what had happened to them in the past. What had happened to them would have really annoyed me as well, and how they struggled with it. Another person came to me that was experiencing something in their life right now that was horrible, whereby they were having to really show grace. It's the hardest thing in the world, friends. It's far easier to put in all that study in the Word and to get to know the Bible inside out and back to front and understand the Greek and the Hebrew and all these things. But if we can't live this message out, we haven't even got off the starting block. And I'm very aware in my own life that I have fallen very short of this. And it hurts. It hurts. Jesus said to this church, you have abandoned your first love. The cross. If you want to understand love, it's displayed at the cross. For God so loved the world that he gave it. Everything that you see at the cross is the perfect display of love. That truth isn't winked at. Injustice is not winked at. It's punished. But you see a display of grace which is so other that we can't get our heads around it. But we are supposed to display that level of grace now in our walk. So we talk about the last days, and we are most certainly walking into the last days. We have to get used to actually living out this grace. Remember Les Mis, the musical, where the thief comes in, steals a load of stuff, he gets caught, he's taken back to the priest, and the priest says to him, you left the best, the silver candlesticks. And he gives him the very best, and he says, you know, see this as an example of grace in your life. Let this be an example to you. And that man went on, and his life was changed completely. Amazing grace. So here's the discussion point at the end. Give two examples. One of a time in your life where you had the opportunity of showing this level of grace, but you totally failed to. And I think that should be easy to do. But also, Give an example in your life of a time where there was an injustice, things were against you, it was wrong, but you actually showed that kind of grace, or something like that kind of grace. I think this will take up a lot of time, and at the end of it, we need to pray for one another, because I guarantee you there'll be people in your house groups that will be going through something right now where they're hurt, they've been hurt unjustly, they're going through something, and they're harbouring resentment, maybe bitterness, and we have to bring it to we have to show the world that we're different, friends. So have a wonderful Zoom group. This is a crucial message, maybe the most important discussion we've had so far. God bless you guys. See you soon.